His true story from North Carolina. They cut him out, so he sold their inheritance. True story. I was sitting in my truck outside the Lowe's off Highway 70 when I realized I had nowhere to be. That sounds like nothing, a small thing, a man in a truck in a parking lot. But for 43 years, I had somewhere to be, someone who needed me, a child to pick up, a wife waiting, a job site, a doctor's appointment for my mother before she passed, a baseball game, a parent-teacher conference, a broken toilet at my daughter's apartment, a fence that needed mending at my son's house. I was the man who showed up. That was my whole identity. I showed up. And then, one Tuesday morning in October, I looked at my phone, and there were no messages, no missed calls, no voicemails, no texts, nothing, just a blank screen. The same blank screen I had been staring at for 3 months. I am 71 years old. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment on the south side of Winston-Salem. Before that, I lived in the house I built with my own hands on 3 acres off Silas Creek Parkway. I built that house in 1994. I framed it, I ran the electrical, I laid the hardwood floors. My wife Carol picked out the paint colors. My son Tommy was 7 and he handed me nails. My daughter Jenny was 5 and she drew on the plywood with chalk. That house was supposed to be where I died, where my grandchildren came for Thanksgiving, where my body was carried out in a bag. That house is gone now. Not sold, not burned.
Just gone. Stolen. And the people who stole it are the same people I carried on my shoulders. I wake up at 4:15 every morning. Old habit from the construction trade. I don't set an alarm anymore, but my eyes open at 4:15 like a switch flips. I sit up in bed and for 1 second, I forget. That second is the best part of my day. Then I remember. I remember that Carol is gone. Not dead. She is living in a condo in Clemens with a man named Gary who sells used cars. I remember that Tommy hasn't spoken to me in 14 months. I remember that Jenny only calls when she needs money, which she doesn't anymore because I don't have any. I remember that I haven't seen my grandchildren in almost 2 years. Lily is 8 now. I wouldn't recognize her if she passed me on the sidewalk. Mason is 6. He was born the week before everything exploded. I held him in the hospital. He smelled like powder and milk. He grabbed my finger. I cried. Tommy told me to toughen up. That was the last normal moment I had with my son. Let me start at the beginning. Not of my life, but of the end of it. The beginning of the end was a Tuesday too. Funny how that works. Tuesdays have become my enemy. I retired in 2019. I was 67. I had worked since I was 14 years old. Paper route, grocery store bagger, roofing crew at 16, framing at 18, general contractor by 25. I built over 200 houses in Forsyth County. Not big developments, custom homes, one at a time.
I poured my body into those houses. My knees are shot. My lower back is titanium and regret. My right shoulder sounds like gravel when I rotate it. But I had a retirement account. I had a pension from the union. I had the house paid off. I had a little money saved. Not rich, but comfortable. Carol and I were supposed to travel. We talked about the Blue Ridge Parkway, the Outer Banks, a cruise to Alaska. We never took a single trip. Not one. Because right after I retired, my daughter Jenny got pregnant with Lily, and my son Tommy decided to start a landscaping business. And they needed me. Jenny needed a babysitter because her husband Mark worked second shift at a furniture warehouse. Carol was happy to watch Lily 2 days a week, but 2 days became 3, 3 became 4. Then Carol got tired. Carol started having headaches. Carol said she needed a break. So I started watching Lily. I loved it. I really did. I would take her to the park. I taught her how to blow on dandelions. I pushed her on the swings until my arms ached. She called me Pops. That was my name, Pops. When she said it, my heart cracked open in a good way. Tommy needed help with his business. He had 2 employees, a beat-up Ford F-150, and a dream. He didn't know how to bid jobs. He didn't know how to manage cash flow. He didn't know that grass grows faster in the spring and you need more crews. I had run a business for 40 years, so I helped him. I built him a website. I taught him how to use QuickBooks. I went with him to estimate jobs. I showed him how to fire a bad employee without getting sued. I put $30,000 of my retirement money into his company because he needed a new mower and a trailer and a truck that wouldn't smoke going up a hill. He promised to pay me back in 2 years. That was 4 years ago. I didn't mind. He was my son. Jenny was my daughter. They were building their lives. I had already built mine. That is what fathers do. We pour ourselves out until we are empty, and then we find a little more to pour. Carol changed slowly. So slowly I didn't notice until it was too late. She started going to the gym in 2020. She was 63. She had never stepped foot in a gym before. I thought it was a health thing. Her doctor said she needed to work on her bone density, so she joined that Planet Fitness near the mall. She bought new leggings, new sneakers, a water bottle that cost $30. I made a joke about her becoming a fitness model. She didn't laugh. She used to laugh at my jokes. That was the first crack. She met Gary at the gym. I didn't know that at the time. I found out later from a mutual friend who felt sorry for me. Gary is a retired car salesman, divorced twice, tan skin, white teeth, wears those golf shirts with the little alligators on them. He is 68. He told Carol she looked young for her age. He told her she deserved to feel beautiful. He told her I didn't appreciate her.
All the things a man says when he wants another man's wife. And Carol believed him. Or maybe she wanted to believe him. Maybe she had been unhappy for years, and I was too busy being a father and a grandfather and a handyman and an ATM to notice. The affair started in 2021. I found out in 2022. I found out because Carol left her phone on the kitchen counter when she went to take a shower. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you." I picked up the phone. I had never picked up her phone before. Not once in 40 years. But something moved my hand. Something cold and curious and terrified. I read the message. Then I read the messages above it. Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. Going back 6 months. Pictures I cannot unsee. Words I cannot forget. I stood in my own kitchen, holding the phone, and my hand started shaking. Not a little shake. A violent tremor like I was standing in a blizzard. My knees buckled. I had to sit down on the floor I had tiled myself in 1995. I sat there on that tile, and I read every single message. Carol came out of the shower. She had a towel on her head. She saw me on the floor with her phone. Her face didn't go pale. Her face didn't show shock or guilt or fear. Her face went hard. Hard, like she had been waiting for this moment. Like she had already rehearsed what she would say. She said, "Give me the phone." I said, "Who is Gary?" She said, "It doesn't matter."
I said, "You were having an affair." She said, "It started because you were never home." I said, "I retired 3 years ago." She said, "You were never home emotionally." I said, "I built a house for our children. I worked 60 hours a week so you could stay home with them." She said, "That was 40 years ago." I said, "I just spent $30,000 on Tommy's business. I babysit Lily 4 days a week. What do you mean I am never home emotionally?" She said, "You just don't get it." And that was the moment. That was the moment I realized my wife of 40 years had already left me. She just hadn't moved out yet. She moved out 2 weeks later. Gary had already leased a condo. She took her clothes, her jewelry, her sewing machine, and her grandmother's china. She left the china pattern I never liked. I watched her load the car. I asked her if she wanted to go to marriage counseling. She said no. I asked her if she loved Gary. She said she didn't know. I asked her if she ever loved me. She didn't answer. She just closed the trunk and got in her car and backed out of the driveway. My driveway. The one I had sealed every spring for 25 years. She didn't look back. Not once. I called Tommy that night. I was a mess. I was crying. I don't cry. I didn't cry at my father's funeral. I didn't cry when I broke my leg on a job site and had to wait 2 hours for an ambulance. But I was crying that night. I told Tommy what happened. I told him about Gary. I told him his mother left.
He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Dad, I need to tell you something." I said, "What?" He said, "Mom told me about Gary a month ago. She asked me not to say anything. She said she wanted to leave on her own terms." I said, "You knew?" He said, "She made me promise." I said, "Your mother has been cheating on me for 6 months and you knew and you didn't tell me?" He said, "She was going to tell you eventually." I hung up the phone. I didn't scream, I didn't throw anything. I just pressed the end call button and sat in the dark. Jenny reacted differently. I called her the next morning. She cried. She came over with a bottle of whiskey and a box of tissues. We sat on the couch and she held my hand and she said all the things you want to hear. She said Mom is wrong. She said Gary is a sleazebag. She said I will always be on your side. She said you are the best father in the world. I believed her. That was my mistake. The divorce was quiet. North Carolina is a 50-50 state. Carol got half of everything. The retirement account, the pension, the house. She didn't want the house. She wanted cash. So I had to sell the house I built, the house where my children learned to walk, the house where we had Christmas every year for 3 decades. I sold it to a young couple from Charlotte. They painted the brick white. They ripped out the oak cabinets. They paved the backyard where Tommy used to play catch. I drove by it once, just once. I sat across the street in my truck, and I watched a man who was not me carrying groceries into my house. He had a key that opened my door. He had a wife who kissed him on the porch. I drove away, and I never went back. I used my half of the money to buy a small house near the fairgrounds. It was a fixer-upper, a ranch from the 1970s with brown shag carpet and avocado green appliances. I planned to renovate it myself. I had time now. Too much time. But before I could start, Tommy came to me with a problem. His landscaping business was failing. He had taken on too much debt. He had bought a new truck he couldn't afford. He had hired 2 more employees and then lost his biggest commercial contract. He owed money to suppliers. He owed money to the IRS. He was going to lose everything. He came to my new house on a Sunday afternoon. He sat on my porch and he put his head in his hands and he cried. My son, my 40-year-old son, crying on my porch like he was 7 years old again with a scraped knee. He said, "Dad, I know I messed up. I know I didn't tell you about Mom. I was wrong. I was a coward. But I need you. I need your help. Please. I will pay you back. I will never lie to you again. I just need a second chance." What was I supposed to do? He was my son. My only son. My namesake, Thomas Edward Jr. I looked at him and I saw the boy who used to fall asleep on my chest watching football. The boy who asked me to teach him how to shave. The boy who cried at his wedding because he was so happy. I said, "Okay." I said, "I will help you." I took $120,000 from my divorce settlement. Every penny I had left after buying the house, I gave it to my son. He hugged me. He said, "Thank you, Dad. You won't regret this, I promise." I regret it. I regret it every single day. For 6 months, things were fine. Tommy made his payments on time. He was calling me more often. He came over for dinner on Sundays. We watched football together. We talked about nothing and everything. I started to feel like maybe I wasn't going to die alone. Maybe my family hadn't abandoned me. Maybe Carol was just a detour on a long road. Then I got sick. It was my gallbladder, then it was my prostate, then it was my blood pressure. Just old man problems, nothing dramatic. No cancer, no heart attack, just a slow crumbling. I needed surgery for the gallbladder, a simple outpatient thing, but I needed someone to drive me home. I asked Jenny. She said she was busy with Lily. I asked Tommy. He said he had a big landscaping job that day. I asked my brother Jim, who lives in Raleigh. He said he would come, but he sounded annoyed. I said, "Never mind." I took an Uber. I sat in the waiting room alone. I filled out the forms myself. I listed my emergency contact as my neighbor Margaret because I didn't have anyone else. The nurse asked me who was picking me up. I said no one. She looked at me with that look, the pity look. I hate the pity look.
I recovered alone. I made myself soup. I changed my own bandages. I walked around my living room holding my stomach because it hurt to stand up straight. Margaret checked on me twice a day. She brought me a casserole. She is 74, a widow. Her husband died 5 years ago. She has 2 children who live in California. She understands loneliness. We sit on our porches sometimes and wave at each other. That is the closest thing I have to a friendship now. The betrayal happened on a Saturday, a cold Saturday in February. I went to Tommy's house because he asked me to look at a leak in his basement. His house is a nice colonial off Country Club Road. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a fence, a playset in the backyard for Lily and Mason. I paid for the fence. I paid for the playset. I paid for the new water heater when his old one died. None of that matters now. I was in the basement looking at the leak. It was coming from a pipe joint that needed sealing, simple fix. I went upstairs to get my bag of tools from my truck. Tommy was in the kitchen with Kenny. They didn't hear me come up the stairs. The stairs are carpeted. I walked into the kitchen and they were standing close together talking in low voices. Tommy was holding his phone. Jenny was shaking her head. Tommy said, "We have to tell him eventually." Jenny said, "No, we don't. We just wait. He will be dead in 5 years anyway." Tommy said, "That's cold." Jenny said, "It's practical. He has no one else."
We are his only family. When he dies, the house is ours. The land is worth at least $200,000. We just have to keep him happy until then. I stood in the doorway of my son's kitchen. My daughter was talking about my death like it was an investment strategy. My son was nodding. Not a firm nod, a reluctant nod, but a nod. He was agreeing with her. He was agreeing that the only value I had left was the dirt under my house. I said, "I can hear you." They both turned. Jenny's face went white. Tommy dropped his phone. It hit the tile and the screen cracked. Nobody moved for a full 5 seconds. Then Jenny said, "Dad, that's not what we meant." I said, "What did you mean?" She said, "We were just talking about the future." I said, "My future?" She said, "Your estate planning." I said, "I am 70 years old. I am not dead." She said, "We know that." I said, "You are standing in a kitchen I paid to remodel, and you are waiting for me to die so you can sell my house." Tommy said, "Dad, it's not like that." I said, "Then what is it like?" He didn't have an answer. Neither did she. They stood there in their nice kitchen with their nice appliances and their nice faces, and they had nothing to say. Because there was nothing to say. I had heard the truth. The raw, unvarnished truth. My children did not love me. They tolerated me. They used me. And when I was no longer useful, they would put me in a box and cash the check. I walked out. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked to my truck and I drove home.
The whole drive I kept waiting for the anger to come, or the sadness, or something. But there was nothing. Just a hollow space in my chest where my family used to be. It felt like someone had reached inside me and pulled out everything that mattered and left me empty, but still breathing. Like a house that has been stripped for renovation. The walls are still there, but nothing works. No lights, no heat, no water. That night I called a lawyer, a woman named Diane Fowler. She had handled my divorce. She was good, tough. She didn't take pity cases. I told her what happened. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You need to protect yourself." I said, "I know." The next week, I changed my will. I removed Tommy and Jenny completely. Every penny I had left went to a trust for a local animal shelter. I don't even like animals that much, but the shelter would use the money better than my children would. I also transferred the deed to my house into the trust. My children would get nothing. Not a nail, not a shingle, not a square inch of dirt. Then I did something else. Something I am not proud of, but I am not ashamed of either. I called Tommy's biggest client, a commercial property manager named Rick. I had introduced Tommy to Rick 3 years ago. Rick and I had played golf together. We were friends. I told Rick that Tommy was having financial problems, that he might not be able to finish his contracts, that he had a history of cutting corners. I told Rick the truth, every bit of it.
Rick canceled Tommy's contract the next week. Then Rick called his friend who managed another property.
That contract got canceled too. Within 2 months, Tommy lost 70% of his business. He had to lay off his employees. He had to sell his trucks. He had to file for bankruptcy. Jenny lost her job around the same time. I didn't have anything to do with that, not directly. But I did call her boss and ask some questions, innocent questions, about the company, about job security, about what happens when an employee takes too much time off for personal reasons. Her boss remembered that I had referred Jenny for that job 3 years ago. He felt an obligation to answer my questions. He didn't think anything of it, but he started watching Jenny more closely, and he noticed things he might have overlooked before. She was gone, 2 weeks later, fired for performance issues. Mark, her husband, started asking questions. How could they afford the mortgage now? How could they afford daycare for Mason? How could they afford anything? The stress got to them. They started fighting. Mark found out about the conversation in the kitchen. Jenny told him. He was disgusted. He called me and apologized. I said it wasn't his fault. He said he couldn't look at her the same way. They separated in May. Jenny moved into a small apartment near the mall. She has Lily every other weekend. Mark has custody during the week because Jenny can't afford a lawyer. I know what you were thinking.
You are thinking I am a monster, a vindictive old man who destroyed his children's lives. Maybe you are right. Maybe I am. But you weren't there. You didn't hear your daughter say she was waiting for you to die. You didn't see your son nod in agreement. You didn't spend 43 years giving everything you had to people who saw you as an inconvenience, standing between them and a $200,000 house. Tommy called me after he lost his business. He was drunk. It was 3 in the morning. He said, "You did this." I said, "Yes." He said, "You ruined me." I said, "You ruined yourself when you decided I was worth more dead than alive." He said, "I never said that." I said, "You didn't have to say it." You nodded. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I hate you." I said, "I know." He said, "Don't ever call me again." I said, "I won't." He hung up. That was 14 months ago. I have not called him. He has not called me. Sometimes I drive past his house. The yard is overgrown. The fence I paid for is falling down. There is a for sale sign in the front yard. The bank owns it now. My son lost his house. My granddaughter lost her room. My grandson will grow up in some apartment complex somewhere, and he will never know that his grandfather built houses. He will never know that his grandfather was good with his hands. He will only know that his family broke apart, and no one fixed it. Jenny came to see me once, 6 months ago. She knocked on my door at 7 in the morning. She was crying.
She looked thin. She looked tired. She said, "Dad, I am so sorry." I said, "I know you are." She said, "I didn't mean it. I was just frustrated. I was stressed about money." I said, "I know." She said, "Can we start over?" I looked at my daughter, my beautiful daughter, who I held in my arms when she took her first breath, who I taught to ride a bike, who I walked down the aisle. I looked at her, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not love, not sadness, just nothing. The hollow space had grown. It had filled my whole body. I said, "I don't think we can." She cried harder. I handed her a tissue. She asked if she could use the bathroom. I said yes. While she was in the bathroom, she went through my medicine cabinet. She was looking for pills, prescription painkillers. I had some left from my surgery. She took them, all of them. I found out later when I needed one for my back and the bottle was empty. My daughter stole my pain medication, not to sell, to use. She has a problem. I didn't know. I don't know anything anymore. Carol called me last week. The first time in almost 2 years. She said Gary left her. He found someone younger, a 58-year-old. Carol is 66. She said she was lonely. She said she made a mistake. She said she missed me. I listened to her voice, the voice I had whispered goodnight to for 40 years, the voice that had told me she loved me, the voice that had lied. I said, I am sorry you are lonely. She said, can I come see you? I said, no. She said, why not?
I said, because I don't have anything left to give you. She started crying. I didn't cry. I don't cry anymore. I hung up the phone and I sat in my recliner and I stared at the wall. The wall needs painting. I don't care. So here I am, 71 years old, sitting in my truck outside Lowe's. I came to buy a new toilet flapper. My toilet has been running for 3 days. The sound drives me crazy. But I can't make myself go inside, because what is the point? Fix the toilet. Who will use it? No one visits. No one stays. The phone never rings. The grandchildren don't know my phone number. My son hates me. My daughter is an addict. My ex-wife is alone. And I am alone too. We are all alone in our separate apartments, in our separate cities, with our separate regrets. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there. The way Tommy stopped calling just to talk. The way Jenny always had her hand out. The way Carol looked at me like I was a piece of furniture she had outgrown. I was blind. Or I chose to be blind. Because seeing the truth would have meant admitting that my family was broken. That the people I loved did not love me back. That is a hard thing for a man to admit. A hard thing for any father to admit. We want to believe we raised good children. We want to believe our marriages meant something. We want to believe we didn't waste 43 years of our lives. But belief is not truth. The truth is cold.
The truth is sitting in a parking lot at 9 in the morning because you have nowhere else to go. The truth is a phone that never buzzes. The truth is a toilet that runs and you don't fix it because no one will hear it but you. I started the truck finally. I drove home. I didn't buy the flapper. I walked in my front door and I stood in the living room. The sun was coming through the windows, dust motes floating in the light. The house was quiet. Not a peaceful quiet, an empty quiet. The kind of quiet that follows a funeral after everyone has left. I sat down in my recliner. I pulled the lever to put my feet up. The chair is old. It groans. Carol bought it for me at a garage sale 20 years ago. She refinished the wood. She picked out the fabric. It is the only thing I have left that she touched. I run my hand over the armrests sometimes. I pretend I can feel her fingers. I know that is pathetic. I don't care. I think about the trust sometimes, the animal shelter. Dogs and cats I will never meet will eat well because my children were greedy. There is a poetry in that, a sad poetry. My legacy is not a family, not a house, not a business. My legacy is a bank account that will buy kibble for strays. That is what my life amounted to. Kibble. Tommy texted me yesterday. First text in 14 months. It said, Mom is in the hospital. Pneumonia. She is asking for you. I stared at the text for an hour. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed, I will be there.
Then I deleted it. I typed, I am sorry. Then I deleted it. I typed, nothing. I put the phone down, I went to the kitchen, and I made a pot of coffee. I drank the whole pot. I sat by the window, and I watched the street. A woman walked her dog. A teenager rode a skateboard. A mailman delivered mail to houses that were not mine. Normal life happening all around me. I used to have that life. I used to open my door and step into a world that included other people. Now I just watch. I am a spectator in my own existence. I don't know if I will go to the hospital. Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to see Carol's face, to hold her hand, to pretend for 1 hour that the last 2 years did not happen. But the other part of me knows the truth. She is not asking for me because she loves me. She is asking for me because she is scared. Because she is alone. Because Gary is gone and her children are broken. And she has no one else to hold her hand while she coughs into a plastic mask.
I am her last resort, her emergency contact, the man she threw away. I am supposed to be the one who shows up. That is what I do. I show up. But maybe that is the lesson. Maybe showing up is not a virtue. Maybe showing up is a curse. Maybe the people who show up are the ones who get used, and the people who leave are the ones who get free. I am still in the recliner. The sun has moved. It is afternoon now. The coffee is cold. My phone is on the table next to me. The screen is dark. Tommy has not texted again.
Jenny has not called. Carol is in a hospital bed somewhere, breathing through a tube. And I am in a chair that smells like old man and regret. This is my life. This is what is left. The toilet is still running. I can hear it from here. A constant whisper, a sound that never stops. It reminds me of something. My mother used to say that a running toilet is like a guilty conscience. It never shuts up. She was right. My conscience is running. It is telling me that I am not blameless, that I worked too much, that I was not present, that I confused providing with loving, that I thought money was the same as affection. I bought my children things instead of giving them time. I fixed their problems instead of teaching them to solve their own. I made them dependent on me, and then I resented them for needing me. That is the part I don't say out loud. That is the part I keep in the dark. My children did not become greedy and selfish by accident. They learned it. They learned it from watching me. They learned that love is transactional, that you give something and you get something, that relationships are just contracts with feelings attached. I taught them that. Every time I said, I did this for you, every time I held a favor over their heads, every time I worked late instead of coming home, I taught them that my presence was a resource to be managed. And now I am surprised that they managed me. Now I am shocked that they treated me like an asset. That is what I was.
That is what I made myself. A hammer does not get to cry when it is used to drive a nail. The light is changing again. Evening. I have been in this chair all day. I have not eaten. I have not moved. My legs are asleep. My back hurts. The toilet is still running. I should fix it. I should stand up and go to the hardware store and buy the flapper and come home and fix the toilet like a man who still cares about his house. But I don't care. That is the worst part. I don't care about the toilet. I don't care about the peeling paint. I don't care about the crack in the driveway. I don't care about anything that requires effort. Because effort is what I gave. Effort is what they took. And I am out. The well is dry. There is nothing left to pour. I close my eyes. I think about the Blue Ridge Parkway, the drive Carol and I never took, the leaves in October, the winding road, the overlooks where you can see for miles. I wonder if it is beautiful this time of year. I wonder if I will ever see it. Probably not. Probably I will stay in this chair until the chair breaks, until the house falls down, until the toilet runs itself into silence. Somewhere in this city, my son is sleeping on a friend's couch. My daughter is chasing a high she will never catch. My ex-wife is fighting for air in a sterile room. And I am here. We are all drowning separately. That is what betrayal does. It does not just break trust. It breaks the future. It breaks the past.
It breaks the present moment into a million pieces and leaves you holding one sharp shard, while the rest of the pieces are scattered across the floor where you cannot reach them. My phone buzzes. I open my eyes. A text from a number I don't recognize. It says, "Pops, it's Lily. I have a phone now. Mommy said I could text you. I miss you. When can I see you?" I stare at the words. Pops. That name. That beautiful name. A child wrote that. An 8-year-old girl who still believes in me, who does not know about money or wills or betrayal, who just knows that her pops used to push her on the swings and blow on dandelions and make her pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. She still lives in a world where love is simple, where showing up is enough. I type back, "I miss you too, sweetheart. I will come see you soon. I promise." Then I put the phone down. I sit in the dark. The toilet is still running. The house is quiet. And for the first time in a long time, I am not empty. I am something else. I am tired. I am sad. I am angry. I am hopeful. All of it at once. A man cannot hold all of that. But I am trying. I am trying to hold it. I stand up. My legs hurt. My back screams. I walk to the bathroom. I lift the lid off the tank. I look at the water. The flapper is old. The chain is rusty. I reach in. The water is cold. It shocks me awake. I pull the flapper up. The water stops running. The silence is sudden, deep, complete. I stand in the bathroom of my small house. The house my children will never own. The house that will feed stray animals. The house where I will probably die. I look at myself in the mirror. Gray hair, wrinkles. A man I barely recognize. A man who has been broken and rebuilt and broken again. A man who still has a granddaughter who calls him Pops. Maybe that is enough. Maybe that has to be enough. I turn off the bathroom light. I walk back to my recliner. I sit down. I do not put my feet up. I pick up my phone. I look at Lily's text again. I save the number. I type Pops into the contact name. I put the phone on the table. I close my eyes. The house is silent. The toilet does not run. And I wait. For what? I do not know. Morning, a phone call, a knock on the door, the end, the beginning, something, anything. I wait.